Hello everyone, and welcome back. I know it's been about a month since I've seen you, and even then I'm still not currently seeing you, but I think you get the idea. So a couple of housekeeping things off the top. First, this new format is obviously a work in progress, so if there's anything that isn't working for you or something that you'd like to see changed, let me know. And I'll make adjustments before next week. Second, I did record, you see the finished ray gun here on screen. I did record how I finished the modeling. It's about a 2-hour video. That's entirely optional viewing. If you find that helpful, it's there. If you don't, you can skip it either way, or you can watch it on like double speed and get the gist of it. Entirely up to you, but that is also available to you. Third, as far as the class is concerned, we have 6 weeks left. We missed, out of the month we've had off, we've only missed one class period, so that's not too bad, but we are going to have to sacrifice a little bit of course content because of that, so we're not going to talk about texturing. This is as far as we're going to go with materials. So today is going to be about materials, and then also setting up a scene for lighting and a simple backdrop, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Then I know I was talking about having this having the renders be motion. I still intend on having camera animation as part of this, but I'm going to push that a few weeks down the road after we spend a little bit more time talking about some of the more basic principles and concepts of animation in Blender. So that's still coming, it's just going to be a little bit prolonged. I think that's it for announcements off the top. Make sure you're still checking D2L. That's where the updates are going to be. I also posted in there a link to a Discord channel I set up that I will be on and paying attention to, especially during class times and office hours. So 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Thursdays for sure. I will be monitoring that, but usually throughout the week, whenever I'm sitting at my desk, I'll have that open in the background. So if you have any questions, you can ask them there, and we can either text chat, voice chat, or I can share my screen, and we can kind of figure out whatever you need and get your problem solved. So without further ado, let's get into this. Like I said, this is the finished, or at least the modeling is finished here. So that's what it looks like. There's nothing new that I did here. Everything that we covered a month ago. I used the same concepts and techniques to finish it. Just spent another couple of hours doing so. So the first thing I want to work on today is just getting from here to here. And if you remember, probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago now, I went through all of the different material options, kind of what they do, and a quick once-over of how they work together to get you different effects. So all that's still going to apply. There's not really going to be anything new in that regard, but I do want to cover some kind of best practices, things you can do to help it stand out. Things like using contrasting materials next to each other and just adding some subtle variation. Try to get us pretty decent results without having to get into textures. And I mean, ultimately the right way to do this would be to add textures to UV Unwrap and use something like Substance Painter, or even in Blender, just applying the textures that way. And that's stuff we will get to next semester. In the advanced class, it's just kind of the way that things have happened over the last few months. It's not going to be covered this semester. So I'm going to load up my last file, which is this. We'll save that. And I'm going to save a new version. I'm going to call this 05B Materials Demo, because this is the one that you're seeing. And here we are. So a couple things to take care of first before we start adding or applying materials, we want to make sure our render engine is using cycles, not Eevee. Eevee is the real-time renderer. We want cycles. I'm going to make sure that's on. So we'll probably we'll be back and forth between material preview and rendered. So if we go to material preview, right now it's going to be white because there's nothing there. And then if we go to rendered, it looks like I already have the setting on. You'll probably see this if you go to rendered. By the way, this file will be available on D2L if you want to follow along. It'll be right there in this week's course content section. So if you see this when you go into rendered view, that's because you have no lights in the scene, but we can kind of ignore that for now, and we'll get to the lights a little bit later today. If we go up here to the drop down on the top right, in viewport shading, uncheck scene world, and then it will give you some light. And what it's doing is it has this HDRI image. It has, if you click on it, you've got 9 different options built in to Blender that you can use to preview your scene. So I'm probably going to stick with this one. It's a good neutral one. We still have some contrast. I wouldn't go too crazy with it because you don't want the color of the light to affect your perception of the materials, of the perception of the color materials. So I'll stick with a neutral ish one, and then as we start adding lights, we will make adjustments at that time. And I think that's about it for now. We can get right into the materials. So for this ray gun in particular, there's going to be a lot of metallic-like materials. So I'm going to start with the main body, a new material. I'm going to call this metal_base. Okay, this is the one that everything else is going to be built off of. And yeah, we're not going to get into any node networks or anything like that. By the way, if at this point you see in the materials use nodes, that just means that you haven't swapped over to cycles yet, so make sure you do that. But we'll go back to materials, and I'm going to turn the specular off, the metallic all the way up. And I think the roughness is pretty good at 0.5. I'll maybe bring it down a little bit. And I'm just, if you hit Z, I'm in material preview right now. And I'm going to bring the anisotropic up, and then remember that's the elongated reflections, kind of like brushed metal. And I think that's going to do it from our base metal. Doesn't need to do much else. Okay. So if you wanted to see this rendered, go to rendered view. You see it's starting to look better. It's very grainy, and it's probably fine for just preview. But if you wanted to increase that quality, you can go back up to this render properties tab, and then under sampling viewport, you can bump that up. So I'll go like maybe 128. And you'll see that it'll keep sampling it until it gets to 128. So it's still going to be a little bit noisy. To do a full noise-free render, I'd probably want to be up around 1,000 or 2,000 samples at least. But I'm not worried about that right now. It's just so I can get a sense of what the material is going to look like. So go back to our materials. And as I said, this metal is going to be our base material, so I'm going to select everything. And then I'm going to make sure that the body, the one that we have the material, is the active object, so it should have the lighter orange outline. If it doesn't, just hold down Shift and click on it, and whatever you click on will become the active object. So once it's there, I'm going to link the materials to this object, so I'm going to hit Control-L, make links to materials, and then it's going to give everything with the material that I have. And if I had multiple material slots, like I will in a second, it would link all those slots. If you don't like the shortcuts, I believe it's in Object, Make Links, there it is, and Materials. Okay, you can also link modifiers and collections and all sorts of stuff, but materials is what we want for this. Alright, so once we have that, let's look at our reference here. And we'll go to this view. Actually, go to this view. So I'm going to stay pretty close to this, at least at the start, and then maybe I'll do some variations later. It feels very monotone, but if you look closely, there's actually a handful of different materials. So we've got this main body material. These flatter pieces are probably the same material, even though they look lighter. I'll probably separate them out as a separate material just for some additional contrast. This tubing is slightly bluer. We've got a couple different colors of red. We've got some darker metals. So we'll play around with that and try to give some contrast and help the details stand out. So with the main body still selected, I'm going to go into edit mode. And what we need to do is we need to give it a new material slot. Okay, because any object can have multiple materials. You just have to tell it to do that. So click the plus, it'll add a new material slot. And I'm going to choose my metal base again. I'm actually going to go back in object mode. And you see this number 38. That means that there's 38 objects that are using this material. If you click on that number is going to go away, and we're going to have this metal base 0.001. That means it made a copy of it. And I can adjust this copy without affecting the original material. So I'm going to call this metal accent. You could call it metal red, but if I decide to change the color, then the name would no longer be accurate. So just metal accent, this will be the accent color. And I am going to start with red because I think it looks pretty good, but I'm going to go with a kind of a darker red here. Not too dark. Okay. Before I change anything else, I need to apply this to my object. I'm going to go back into material preview. I need to apply it to the faces that I want to have that red color. So that's going to be going to face select mode. We've got that one. Oh, and I just realized my screen cap keys aren't on. Okay, so now you'll see screen cap keys down here. Again, if those are hard to read, let me know, and I can make adjustments for next time. There's also a bug with it where sometimes if I accidentally hit the caps lock key, that'll stop working. I'll try to remember and fix that if I need to. So I have this face loop selected. I'm going to hit Control plus to grow my selection. And actually it looks like I can probably grab... No, I'll leave it like that. That's fine. So Control plus, and then with my accent material selected, I'm going to click Assign. And now that's red. So I'm going to do that for all of these inner face loops. And I know for all of these they are 3 face loops wide. So if I select them all and hit Control plus, it'll grow that selection on all of them, and then I can click Assign. And now we have the red material. At this point I can go back to my metal accent and start adjusting it further. Again, I don't want it just to be a change in color, I want it to feel like it's a change in material. If we look at our reference, it almost looks like it's at the very least like an enamel paint. It's got a different quality to it. It doesn't look very metallic. So I'm going to bring the metallic back a little bit. I'm also going to decrease the roughness, and I'm going to pull out the anisotropic completely. Maybe increase that roughness a little bit. Okay, and again, we can check that in rendered view if we want. Get a better sense of what that's going to look like. And once we do, we can move on. So again, we also have those accents on the fins up here, on the handles down there, so I'll do those real quick. Zoom in here. And the way that I'm hitting Control plus to grow the selection, this is another reason why having good edge flow is important. It speeds up that process quite a bit. So I'm going to click plus to add a new material slot, choose my metal accent color again, and click Assign. Same thing down here. Select all of these edge loops. Add the material slot. Choose my accent and click Assign. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. Let's move on to the next thing. I think we will go with... we'll go with this. Actually, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to split my view here. And I'm going to change this over to the image editor, and I'll pull that up so we can you can keep an eye on what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I'm going to work on this part right now. So in object mode, I have it selected. Click that number to make a unique copy of it. And I'm going to call this metal_dark. I'm going to bring down the color. I don't want to go all the way to black or all the way to white. Nothing is either pure black or pure white. So if you want it to be black, you can go pretty dark, but I wouldn't go too much past that. That's actually probably too much for what I'm trying to replicate, but something like that. All right. It is pretty metallic. I'm going to increase the roughness. Maybe not. Maybe I'll decrease the roughness. I know I'm going to take out the anisotropic. Yeah, we'll go a more matte finish on this one. You can always change it later. Yeah, I think that's too dark. There we go. Okay. Change my mind. I think it looks better. Glossier. All right. So once I have that, we can look at what other parts would have that material. So like this bracket would have that. So we can just, instead of adding a new slot here, I'll pull this down a little bit too so we can see that better. Instead of adding a new slot, I can just change this to the dark material. This piece here, I'm going to change to the dark material, but that's not where it's going to stay. I'm actually going to make a unique copy of that. I'm going to call this medium dark. I'll pull this outside so you can see it a little bit better. And we'll lighten this up. We're going to kind of split the difference. And this one I'm going to bring that roughness back up a little bit. And we can look at these highlights and see that they're not elongated, so there's probably no anisotropic reflections there. I am going to bring up the specular a little bit too, I think. Just a little bit. Okay. So from there I'm going to go through and apply these wherever those materials should be. So if we start maybe up here on this top capsule, if we zoom in here, you can see all the shadows, or all the kind of recessed parts have that darker material. So I'm going to grab this one and this one. Whoops, not that one. That one. Control plus. New material slot. Choose the dark material. Click Assign. And I'll do the same thing in here. Click those and that. Grow that selection. And I think I actually want to grab those two as well. Click Assign. And if we go back to our material preview, you can see it's been applied, but it's creeping up the sides of the kind of middle pieces. I don't want that, so I'm just going to add some edge loops here, and you'll see those will creep back down the wall. Okay, and that helps. It helps those recesses stand out. Gives you a little bit more contrast there. You could even select this face loop, grow it, add another material slot, and choose that medium dark material. Click Assign. Okay, you can see we need to add in another edge loop there. Okay, got a little bit more contrast there. Do the same thing for these top parts. We'll skip over that for now. Let's look at this capsule now. So the capsule, I'll take care of those recesses first. So this will be the same thing that we just did. Whoops. And my hotkeys went away. Oh, I think it's because I split the view. Yeah, it's still not really. It's kind of annoying. Right, maybe I'll just have to Alright, maybe we'll try that. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so as I was saying, grab that, Control plus, new slot, dark, and assign. Okay. And now we need to grab, I'm going to hit number pad slash to go into local view. And we're going to grab all of these vertices. And then I'm going to hit Control plus a bunch of times and grow that selection right into the corner there. So from here, I'm going to add a brand new material. Click new, and I will call this capsule paint. And I'll make this a nice bright red. I'll add some specular, bring that roughness way down. Click assign. There we go. So we can kind of see what that's looking like. Hit number pad slash. Oh. Okay. Let's also, I'm going to give this a clear coat to give it some extra gloss. And I think that's going to be pretty good on that. Yeah, okay. So that's good. Let's look at these pipes now. As I said, they're slightly bluer than the rest. So I'm going to select one, make a unique copy of that, and we'll call it metal pipes. And here I'm going to go to RGB, and I'm just going to bump that blue up a little bit. Maybe we'll go more, something like that. So I don't want it to, I don't want to go full blue, at least not yet. So maybe we'll do something like that. Okay, once I have that where I want it, which I don't. Come on, there we go. I'll go a little bit closer to teal. That's better. Alright, so once I have it where I want it, and I'm going to select all the other pipes. And then I'll select that one last, and we're going to make that link again. So Control L links to materials. Deselect, and there we go. Okay, let's look at this little piece right here. So I'm going to start by changing the base color here to the medium dark. And I'm also going to make these rivets medium dark. And then I'm going to go back in here, and I want this centerpiece to be that normal metal base color. So we will, I'm going to grab this face loop and then just Control plus a bunch of times to grow that. There we go. Actually, that's one too many. Add a new material slot and metal base assign. Cool, that works. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to take this little bracket piece and we're going to make this medium dark as well. Okay. Down here, I'm going to go to local view for this. I'm going to keep most of it the brighter color, but I do want this part to be the medium dark. And then in here, this is a very tiny detail, which would be hard to see without doing this. I'm going to make this the really dark one. Click Assign. Okay. Yeah, okay. Got a local view, so now you can see that that's standing out a lot more, a lot easier to see that detail. This, we'll go into local view. I'm going to add a new slot. I'm going to make it the dark one, and then add a little bit more. Click Assign. There we go. That's working. For the sake of contrast, I'm going to make these rivets the medium dark. Same thing with these rivets. Just a little bit more interesting that way. Okay, and I think we're getting pretty close at this point. I'll make this the dark, and then I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to select that face loop and grow this. Make sure I have exactly what I want selected. That looks good. Oops. There we go. That looks good. And we'll assign that base material back to it. So this first part is really just separating everything out and getting kind of color placed where you want it. Afterwards you can go back and it's really easy to make those changes to colors or try different color and material schemes. I think we're pretty good under there. There's only a couple more things that I want to do. I'm going to switch to this view and see what's going on here. I'm going to set this to the medium dark. And go in here. Alright, and this is going to be, I think we'll make this dark. And then we're going to select this handle. Now sometimes the subsurface modifier can kind of get in the way, so I'm just going to turn that off in edit mode. That's good. That'll work. Okay. And now we can go back here and we will make, whoops, I'll make this the medium dark. That looks good. Get out of local view. I'm also going to make these rivets medium dark as well. Okay. So that's feeling pretty good. Come in here real quick. Number pad period to zoom in there. Command plus. New material, dark, assign. And while we're at it, so this one's going to be a little bit more unique. I'm going to first make these dark and assign, and then this top one I'm going to make the medium dark, click assign, and you'll see that that color is creeping up again. So I'm going to add that edge loop and bring that back into place. Same thing here. They were actually made from the same geometry, or one is just a copy of the other, so I have to do the same process here. So we'll add color. One's going to be dark, the other one is going to be medium dark. I'll click Assign there, add that edge loop again to control where that color is, and then we can go back in here, grab that one, Control plus, dark, and Assign. Okay. So the very last thing that we need to give a material to is this little gauge here that I made. So if we go back to our other side view here, and we'll zoom in. Okay, so we have the base color. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to leave that part alone, but we can make this red. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn off the subdivision in edit mode and make it so I can zoom in here and see. So I want to make sure I have the right thing selected. Okay. Go back to materials, and I'm going to add a new material, and I'm going to call this gauge white. And I know this one's going to be white, so I'm fine calling it that. I'll go up a little bit. Again, I don't want to go all the way up to 1. I'll go to like 0.94, should be fine. And I don't... Oh, you know, we can do some specular, but it's going to be pretty rough. I'll click Assign so we can see this. Yeah, I think that'll work. And then I'm going to add a new slot. I'm going to grab that white again, make a copy. We'll call this red. Change that base color to red. I want to desaturate that a little bit as well. Something like that will work. And then grab those three faces, go to red and click Assign. That's good. I like that. If you wanted to, again, without texturing, we're kind of limited to wherever the faces are. So if you wanted to add like a little black line there, what you could do, nope, not that. You could add another edge loop right in here. Select those faces. Have that red. And I can't make a copy of it in edit mode, so I need to go out to object mode, click on that, and we'll call this black. Again, we're not going to go all the way to black. We'll desaturate that, pull that most of the way down. Okay, back into object mode, click Assign, or edit mode, click Assign. So now we have that. Now we can jump. Okay, you see that made that a lot wider than I wanted that to be. So, I'm going to add an edge loop here and one there. Just keep that in place. And then I'm going to select these bottom two faces, and I'm going to assign the white back to them. There, that's better. Okay. Now I'm going to select the needle. And the needle, I actually need to add a little bit more detail too. So I'm going to select these faces, those four faces, inset them a little bit, and then inset them a lot more, inset them a little bit, extrude them out a little bit, extrude them out a fair amount more. There we go. I'm going to select everything. So add a new slot. We'll give it the dark metal. Click Assign. And then grab those four center faces again. Expand the selection out just 2 times. Go back to Metal Base and click Assign. Okay, so there's our needle. And I think that's about it for assigning the materials. So at this point, you can call this good and done as far as materials are concerned and move on to lighting. Alternately, you can start to kind of play around with what the accents are going to look like. So I can take this main body, for instance, and take that base. And you see how it's a little bit warmer in tone. So maybe I'll make a unique copy of that. And I'll call this metal base warm. Or I could also call it alt for alternate. And I'm just going to creep into the warm hue a little bit. Okay. Something like that. And then maybe you want to apply that to a few other places. Okay, so you can play around with it that way. Maybe you want your accent color to be different. And because all of these red spots are using the same accent color, where you change it in one spot, you will change it in all spots. So now it's a blue color. You could do something like, maybe you want these to kind of glow a little bit. So maybe we go to kind of a lighter or saturated kind of teal sort of thing. And then we come down to emission. Want that to emit. And we go into render view. Now remember, the thing about emission is that it is going to slow down the render quite a bit. And if you don't have anything for that light to bounce off of, you're not really going to notice it. And this one I'm going to crank all the way up there. And maybe we can do something like that maybe. Yeah, so you have that option. Maybe this handle down here, you decide that I don't want this to be metal, so I'll just call this handle material, and I'll take the metallic out completely. And maybe we want this to be going very 80s with that color scheme. We want this to be maybe a darker blue. Something a little bit more desaturated. Okay, you can bring some specular in just a little bit. Okay, maybe you give it a clear coat. It's not the best color combination there, but I think you get the idea. Yeah, I think, again, once you get all the materials kind of placed, then it's just playing around and finding the color combinations that you like. So I think I'm going to call it there for this video. There's going to be another one today, and that's going to be about lighting and setting it up for kind of a studio scene. That should probably be about 20 minutes to half an hour, I'm guessing, but have at it with this. I hope this is clear, and let me know if you have any questions.